Hello, I'm Kyle, and tonight we're going to go through Esther Chapter 3. So, the title at the beginning of this chapter, in the New King James Version, they've got Haman's Conspiracy Against the Jews. Chapter 3. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. Verse 2. And all the king's servants who were within the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman, for so the king had commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. Verse 3. Then the king's servants who were within the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you transgress the king's command?" Verse 4. Now it happened, when they spoke to him daily and he would not listen to them, that they told it to Haman, to see whether Mordecai's words would stand. For Mordecai had told them that he was a Jew. Okay, so we got a couple things going on here. Haman is the next character introduced here in the story. He's been promoted. He's a very high-ranking official, and the king has commanded that others bow down and pay homage to Haman. The problem here is that Mordecai is refusing to do this, and when questioned, he's saying that he's a Jew. So I know for me, when I hear that, I think, okay, well, we have other stories like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They did not bow down to the graven image or the golden image set up by Nebuchadnezzar. So I'm thinking along those lines as to why he's not bowing down. I've had other suggestions I've been through that it may be he wasn't bowing down to him because Haman was an Agagite. So at the beginning it says he was the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. So I'm not sure if this Agagite is that lineage or that family is related to, but it's possible that he could be related to King Agag, who's an Amalekite. So if that's true, then maybe there's some another reason that Mordecai finds it distasteful to bow down to Haman. Now this is all just speculation. None of that's in the story as to why. The only answer given is that because he's a Jew. So, it's really up for interpretation. Now, if it is, he's just not bowing down because Jews don't bow down to anything or anyone other than the one true God, then that's possible that's what's happening. Could it be because he does not like that Haman's an Agagite? It's mentioned in the story, but it's hard to know. So a little bit further on that, just because it's interesting. And 1 Samuel 15:3. Well, we'll come back to that one, but let's see. Okay, we'll come back to those scripture references. But anyway, so that's kind of a couple reasons. A third reason that I would think is maybe Haman just was not a person that Mordecai found worthy to bow down to. Mordecai seems pretty perceptive. It is interesting to me, though, that he asks Esther not to reveal her ethnicity, and yet he's openly saying he's a Jew. So that's interesting to me. Kind of what his line of thought was behind that. But I mean, to me, it's possible that he just didn't want to bow down. But he did give the explanation that he's a Jew. So there's some kind of implication there, or at least that's the line of reasoning he's giving right now as to why he's not bowing down. So you'll see pretty soon that seems like it's what's going to cause some trouble. Verse 5, when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. So he's wanting somebody to do something. They're not doing that. I think we can relate to that. He feels like he's entitled to this. The king has commanded it, but Mordecai's not having it. And he's filled with wrath. He can't get him to do it. Verse 6, but he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. So at this point, I think, to me, it seems that, he's decided to leave Mordecai alone for now, but instead target the whole people group. In other words, this was such a great offense. Not only does he want to wipe out Mordecai, but let's just wipe out everybody. Is what it seems is happening here. And this is because, he knew that they were the people of Mordecai. Mordecai let them know that. So it's interesting that that's going on this way. Maybe there's more to the story. That's all the detail we get for now, though. Verse 7, in the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman to determine the day and the month, until it fell on the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. So we're now seeing that King Ahasuerus is in his 12th year. So at the beginning, we read in the first chapter, he's having this feast. It's his 3rd year of his reign. 4 years in the future, we're making Esther queen, and that was said to be the 7th year of his reign. And so now we're almost doubling that time, and we're in the 12th year of his reign. And then they cast pur, which is a lot, and then extends another 12 months. So from the beginning of the story until, Haman is about to try and carry out his plan to deal with the Jewish people because of Mordecai, we're at probably about 10 years. So it's just interesting how, in a few chapters, that time progression. So there's a lot probably happening. And so who knows like all the intricate details, but this is what's recorded. So we can guess. It's fun to think about it and to kind of put ourselves there. But that's a pretty decent amount of time for a story that seems, so quick and concise. All right, we're on verse 8. Then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all other peoples, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore, it is not fitting for the king to let them remain. Verse 9, if it pleases the king, let a decree be written, that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work, to bring it into the king's treasuries. Verse 10, so the king took his signet ring and from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. Verse 11, and the king said to Haman, the money and the people are given to you to do with them as seems good to you. So the important thing is that it comes up a few times in the Bible, but a signet ring, it's kind of like, the document becomes in the king's name as if the king had written it. So he hands it over to Haman. Now Haman has the authority to create whatever decree he wants. So he's got a lot of trust because essentially the king's name is going to be on it. And I don't know if we've mentioned this in the last chapters, but whenever a king of Media or Persia made a law, it cannot be revoked. So we'll find that out here soon. Verse 12. Then the king's scribes were called on the 13th day of the first month, and a decree was written according to all that Haman commanded, to the king's satraps, to the governors who were over each province, to the officials of all people, to every province according to its script, and to every people in their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus it was written, and sealed with the king's signet ring. And the letters were sent by couriers into the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions. So just real quick, earlier we found out that they cast lots to find out which month, and we see that the lot falls on the 12th month, so very far away from the first month. So in my mind, that lot, maybe that was being guided a little bit by God to give some extended time for preparations for the Jewish people once this decree is made. Maybe, but I think from Haman's standpoint, hey, we've got 12 months to try and figure out this plan. So there's, with casting lots and divining and doing different things like that, it's very possible any perspective could have thought, hey, this gives us some time here on both ways. So, but it seems like, there's definitely something interesting about that it's all the way on the last month, at least in my mind. Another thing that's mentioned here is that this decree is to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, children and women, in one day on the 13th day, 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Okay. So to go back to the scripture references I was starting with at the beginning, in 1 Samuel 15:3, now this is assuming Haman is related to King Agag, who's an Amalekite. If not, it's just interesting because we know at the beginning we find out that Mordecai is his father was Kish, and he's a Benjamite, just the same way as Saul. His father was Kish, and he's a Benjamite. So we know those aren't the same people. So they don't have to necessarily be the same Agags. But if they are, or at least with the story, let's kind of look. On 1 Samuel 15, verse 3, God had commanded, or actually, no, this is where, this is where there was a command to attack the Amalekites and to destroy everything. So I think it even was listed there, similar, like women, children, donkeys, oxen, like everything that there is. So the other thing is that Saul had spared King Agag, and it took Samuel. Samuel killed Agag. So we know Agag did die, but it's possible some descendants of Agag had survived. I think it's possible that happened. It doesn't have to be necessary for Esther to stand on its own, so it doesn't really matter. Just interesting that now we've got Haman, who's an Agagite, calling for the destruction of the Jewish people, and God back in Samuel 15:3 said, the Amalekites, of whom King Agag was the king, should have been utterly destroyed. And the reason they were to be destroyed goes back to Exodus and Deuteronomy. So in Exodus, the Amalekites had attacked Israel unprovoked, and then that was the reference there is Exodus 17:14, and then again in Deuteronomy 25:17 through 19, Moses again reminds the Israelites that they are to wipe out the Amalekites. And that's something that was going to need to happen. Now, it is important to note that it's never should be good to hear that somebody's being wiped out, or that there's a judgment happening.
Judgment was released on June 21st, 2019, and it is available on Google's.
Oh, it looks like my tablet here's picking up on my speaking. Anyway, it's important to know there are verses like Ezekiel 33:11 that show that God takes no pleasure in the wicked. The ultimate goal would be for a wicked person or people to turn from their ways. However, It's when God decides on judgment, it's God's judgment. We know from the Bible, if everything's to be trusted, that God is righteous. And so it's a lot to think about from a human perspective. We seem to understand if like different countries go to war, but it's a little harder to stand from God or to understand from God's perspective, because we aren't necessarily seeing things the way God is. So at that point we just kind of we either resist that, or we trust that God knows what he's doing. So, but it's interesting if Agag was to be wiped out, and yet he had some descendants that survived, and now if Haman was one of them, it seems like the roles are reversed, and now we've got a person who is ready to do great harm to the Jewish people because of a man, Mordecai. So anyway, let's carry on here. Verse 13, and the letters were sent by couriers into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their possessions. Verse 14, a copy of the document was to be issued as law in every province, being published for all people, that they should be ready for that day. I always wonder what that means for them to be ready, for the Jewish people to be ready, to be exterminated, or for people to be ready to not hinder. It's interesting what that means, but or maybe just so people know what's happening and there's not confusion. So verse 15, the couriers went out, hastened by the king's command, and the decree was proclaimed in Shushan the citadel. So the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was perplexed. So we can see as these documents goes out, as these decrees go out, people are not understanding quite what's happening, and I think it's just interesting. We've got some government dealings going on, and we have some very personal, to one person personal things going on, and yet it's impacting a whole lot of people. And we've got people perplexed. So I think it's kind of one of those things we look at, we say, okay, we're dealing with people. The government is made of people, and they're making decisions as people make them. And Haman does not seem to be seeking, truth or, the whole piece that he would want to take out so many people for what one man has done does not make a lot of sense, but there it is. That concludes chapter 3. Tomorrow we'll do chapter 4. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you tomorrow for chapter 4. Thanks.